Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm just doing a really quick kind of impromptu video, some pros and cons to blades that I regularly carry, things that you see here on the channel quite often. So first up I have some Joker knives. This one right here is the Joker Ember, and these are made in Spain, so it'd be, I suppose, pronounced Joker. And this one is a 14C blade. This one is also a 14C blade, so same blade steel. Carry these pretty often. I like that they are Scandi. I like that their fit and finish is really quite good. One of the things about Joker knives, if you listen to anybody else's channel, you hear them talk about it, is they have a really nice fit and finish. Quite high quality, especially considering they pump out quite a few blades. But I have made some modifications to both of these. So both of these had a little bit too much of a guard protruding right here, and it was quite uncomfortable, especially if I was going to grab a little closer to the edge, which is, that's the way that I use a knife, is I get as close as I can to that edge. Usually my thumb rides right in here on a lot of blades so that I can get the most purchase there and get the most, width out of the blade. I usually don't have enough width. I have XL size hands, so I want to be able to fill my hand with as much knife as possible. It's a reasonably thick stock, which I don't usually care for. Both of them are a little bit thicker. I would say both of them are a full millimeter thicker than I wish they were. But that being said, they're not way too big. It's not like 3/16 thick or something. They're just, maybe a little too shallow of a grind here. I wish the grind was higher, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If it was higher, I think I could deal with the thickness a little bit better. So over time, I'll be working on that to modify that. It's a fairly even grind towards the nose on both of these, but I do wish that they were, a millimeter thinner, as well as not having so much right here. Now this one is pretty smooth on all areas, even up here on the shoulders. Relatively smooth. They've taken some time to just, barely buff that out, and that's really nice. The scales meet up very well. The pins don't protrude terribly. Even this barrel, which it's kind of hard to make the barrel pins smooth. Usually they're kind of sharp on the inside. These ones are not sharp, and this one fits the hand really well. This is a great pair. Some of the benefits of these blades particularly, although you can get them in a whole lot of styles, I like the wood ones because it's a little bit traditional. I like this style. I like birch bark. I'm in Minnesota, and birch wood, and these are birch wood scales, and this is a walnut. I think it's a black walnut. And so these are two woods I work with a lot in spoon carving, and I carve spoons with these knives. And they're kind of a nice pair if I go into the woods and doing kind of some bushcraft stuff, or carving, or even just getting camp prep kind of stuff done. These two blades are really nice because they're stainless as well. They're easy to clean off, easy to work with food with, although they are Scandis, and they're just a tad thick. The wood is nice because it's got a nice amount of grip to it. It's not terribly slippery. It's not cold to the touch, as some materials, they do feel a little more cold than others. These feel relatively warm. When it's 20 below out, it's nice to grab onto a wood handle because it receives the heat well from your hands and then holds onto it for a while. I do maybe wish that there was one more pin in here on this, but I think the barrel on the back is going to hold those scales on decently. I do prefer scales that can be removed with some sort of Allen or Torx rather than pinned on handles. But that being said, I'm pretty sure they use epoxy between each layer. I think these are on very well. I've used both these knives very hard, and they're not showing any signs of coming apart. I don't see anything about them that looks like it got beat up, even though I would hit the handle from time to time with a piece of wood if I had to split something quick. And I don't see much that would give me concern. I did have to sand out this little portion right here on the handle of the Ember. I just found that to be a little too, the transition was just a little too sharp right there. And if you're doing like chest lever, something like that, this part right here, that part back here, a little obnoxious. I do from time to time have to sharpen up the spine on this one. Not a problem, just hit it with a rock even that I find out in the woods, and it throws sparks real well off of a fire steel. But you're not going to be able to throw sparks off of rocks with these. They are stainless. Great knives though. You'll see them on the channel very often. Very high quality. I paid for these knives. These are not sponsorship products. I could do without the jimping on this one. I could do without maybe that low grind and the stock thickness on this, but overall, really, really good, high quality products. You can go ahead and check them out on Amazon. I think you're going to find these, the Ember, or knives similar to it, right around $90 to $100. I think I paid $90 for my Ember. The birch seems like it's harder to get a hold of nowadays, and the price is going higher for a lot of these things. For that steel, that Sandvik 14C, I mean, this is literally a steel that was made for knives. That's how it was produced. It was designed to be for knives. And so it's a great, easy to sharpen, easy to strop. Steel holds an edge really well. Great amount of stainless capability. And obviously, it's not rusting anywhere. I don't see anything. All right, so I'll move those out of the way. Next up, two really affordable line of blades that you're going to see on the channel, and you probably have if you've watched for any amount of time. I actually use this one more than I use this one, by far. I've got a couple of these Cons bowls, one in green and one in orange here, and I really like the orange, especially because I like not losing things, being able to find things easily when I'm looking through a bag or if I drop it on the ground. One of my favorite features of these blades is their thinness. I really like thin blades generally. I have a couple thick blades. In fact, I have a thick blade coming from one of the channel sponsors, and I'm excited about that. But when I can, I prefer a thin blade. Aside from the weight factor, it just slices better, and it carves better when it's in a Scandi form, like these are modified Scandis with a dual grind here. And obviously there's a tapered grind, or a tapered distal taper. That's what it's called, a distal taper on the spine here. Throws sparks really well. Again, these are stainless. These are, if I remember correctly, these are more in line with like a 12C steel. So it's a stainless, but I think it's closer to a 12C. So it's not going to be to the caliber of these. Almost called it an Enzo, but it's not going to be to the caliber of this right here. It's probably not going to hold an edge as long, but it's also incredibly easy to sharpen up, even with this dual grind, the distal taper. Very easy to touch up anything on these types of blades. Like I said, I use this one more than this one, but the handles are phenomenal. For a blade of this price range, if you could only spend $40 on a knife or even $25 on a knife, these are going to be near the top of my recommendations, maybe the top, the very top, just because the handle is so good for so many types of people's hands, as well as that thin blade profile. If you're going to fillet fish and you're going to do some carving and whittling and you want a utility knife and just the many features, this knife can be used in a lot of applications. It's got a lot of belly, you could say, right up here towards the nose of the blade. This portion right here, very leaf shape. I like that, and lots of straight knife right here with a Scandi. And it's appropriately thin, so it slices incredibly well. I've never had trouble sharpening these up. Rarely do I have to really even sharpen it. I barely touch up that edge and hit it on a leather strop, and most of the time, that's all it's going to take for these because it's very quick. So these are nice to take out in the woods because I can just hit it on the strop most of the time and get that razor edge right back again. But they're very affordable. Another huge feature of the handle on the Cons bowl specifically, not the Gardberg, but the Cons bowl, is it has this rubbery texture and then a hard plastic texture. And this is like an injection molded something or other. So the tang actually goes back pretty far. I think I want to say it's right around right here, that the tang goes almost all the way back. And that's pretty substantial because it's locked into this material really well. If you ever watch a destruction test from some other channels, when they beat these thing up and see if they can get the tang to come loose from there, it's really difficult. I would dare to say that a knife with pinned handles might be more susceptible to fail in a lot of ways than these types of handles, even though it is not a full tang blade. It's really, really a powerful design in the fact that that epoxy, or not epoxy, but that plastic is going to hold it in incredibly secure. And it also seems to hold up really well in the winter time, which is one thing that was concerning to me, is when you have plastic, hard plastic, in the wintertime vibration. I was concerned with it breaking or shattering in extreme cold. When it's 40 below out and I'm maybe beating on a blade a little bit or just using it kind of hard, I always get worried about thinner profiles, distal tapers, plastic handles. But these are really comfortable. When it's really cold out, this portion especially is quite warm to the touch. It's very warm to the touch, and I appreciate that. This one, just because it is so small, it comes with me a lot. I wish that the Scandi kind of went up further. In fact, most of the time, I think I realized I like just a traditional Scandi because I know what to do with that a little better. But this, I don't know, it might be an aesthetics thing because I like the red so much. It does come in cool colors. Again, the bigger version is thicker than the smaller version here, which is also true of these two. Bigger version is slightly thicker than the smaller version here. And so I'm a big fan of these. You can get a picture of the handle here. The handle on the L-dress is not quite as dimensionally significant as the Cons bowl, but I can get a lot done with this, and this whole package, I mean, it's very, very small. If I just show you in the palm of my hand, this is a really small knife. I'll go ahead and compare these two just so you can get an idea what you're looking at there. Definitely a thicker handle, more of a palm swell, but maybe pretty similar up towards the first couple fingers position there. Yeah, pretty similar, but lots of extra material for that middle finger area, so I'm not binding up my fingers into my palm quite as bad. Like it quite a bit. That's another pair you'll see on the channel, not going anywhere. Wouldn't have any reason to sell them. Wouldn't even make any money if I did sell them because they're so affordable. And if I break them, you know, I'll just toss them right in the garbage. Not a big deal. Moving on. I suppose I could compare these two as well, just so you get an idea. Those handle scales, again, kind of similar, although the Cons bowl is more broad in the handle scales, and that's a benefit. I like that quite a bit. Both of these are really comfortable handles, though. I don't have too much to gripe about with either one. If I had to pick one that is probably better for my XL size hands, you know, I don't know that I even can between these two. These are really, really good if it was just based on handle, but fit and finish is higher on this Ember right here in general. These comes real sharp, but the fit and finish is not usually higher priority. It's just decent. All right, moving on to the end here. Some semi-custom production blades. I'm not sure how you talk about it, but these right here are some of my favorite blades, and especially this one, because when I go do bushcraft or I'm working a lot with a blade, doing especially a lot of carving, material removal. This one with the liners here, this is an LT Wright Genesis in 3V. So I'm a big fan of 3V. I have a few blades in it. I've got a Reef Knives bushcrafter as well in 3V, and this right here is a flat grind Genesis with no liners, also in 3V. Big fan of that steel, does really well. Very tough steel, and even when it's cold, I have not found it to be overly chippy, and I have not found it to fracture on me. So I'm a believer, man. I've bent this knife in particular. I've bent this spine, which is also distal tapered, and it's not very thick. It's rather broad. I have not broken this in really, really cold temperatures. I'm really impressed. Love the red handle as well. Some of the benefits of these blades would be, so this is G10, and these two are micarta, linen micarta on these. This one is called I think they just call that red micarta, and this is called their double red, and this is obviously orange. I really like these blades because their handles, they're very hand filling. If I was just to compare, again, the Joker knife has more of an even 50-50 between blade and handle, and the LT Wright here, although it's not quite as broad in some areas as the Vispa, it is a little bit longer handle, and I can get a lot of control on it, and it does have some really nice palm swells in there, if you can see that. Really nice, even, no hot spots on the whole knife. I didn't have to touch up anything on this blade. As soon as I got it, it was exactly the way I wanted it. Very happy with that overall. 2 pins plus a lanyard hole. Lanyard hole was not sharp inside. These little channels right here, these, I'm not sure what you call those, little divots, they're not sharp. The shoulders aren't bad at all. It's just a really, really nice, high quality fit and finish kind of blade. This one happens to be an O1. That's what that little O stands for right there. So this will spark off a rock, and that's the only blade on the table today that is a carbon steel that will spark off a rock. Everything else is something different or stainless. The thickness, maybe just a hair thicker than I would like for the stock thickness of the blade itself. Like I said, I like thinner blades, but they bring up the Scandi high enough. Again, in comparison, they bring it up just a little bit higher than the Joker knife does. It's higher than the Mora does for this portion, but the Mora is also substantially thinner. So this is still a really slicey knife, and these two kind of keep up with each other, except for the handle. Again, handle dimensions. Obviously, the Mora gets a lot right with how broad it is, how thick it is, good size swell, similar handled length overall. This blade carves really, really nice. ON is not hard to touch up at all when I'm out in the woods. I don't have to have much with me. You know, I hardly would ever even use a diamond rod on something like this because it's so easy to touch up with other things. A lot of times it's just a piece of ceramic, and if you can tell, that's the majority of what this blade has ever had. It's just a piece of ceramic on that edge, and it's still very, very razor sharp. So that's the little guy. Sometimes I like a flat grind out in the woods, especially if I'm working with food in particular, if I'm camping. This knife is a little overkill for that because it's a real chunky handle. Distal taper from the back to the front. It's 3V. You know, it probably don't need 3V to be cutting up meat. But in general woodworking and things of that nature, if I pair up with a smaller knife, I'm real comfortable with either one of these. This one's a little bit more work for woodwork than this one is because of that Scandi grind, obviously. And this one fills the hand just quite a bit more. Really, really happy with the micarta on these. They're great in the wintertime, although they're just a tad bit cold compared to the rubber or the wood of these other blades. So on a really cold day, I guess in my opinion, I can tell that these two are much more comfortable on a very cold day than this one is for temperature. But this gives me less hot spots than these do generally because this is much more hand filling. And if I just add in the mix the G10 version here. Now the G10 does also get cold, definitely gets cold. It's heavy, so it's very handle heavy, but that just makes it maneuver a little better in hand. And this handle I didn't have to do anything to aside from just a little smoothing out right here and on this. And it wasn't because it was a defect. It was designed that way. There is a little bit of a, maybe just a sharper edge in design right there. And I just like to smooth out every edge that I can on anything that's going to be a bushcraft knife. And I really like the G10 as well. It's really substantial in your hand. It's not going anywhere. Not slippery in the slightest. It's not slippery at all. In the winter time with gloves or mittens on, all these blades here I can get a really good grip on, but obviously the LT Wright knives are superior. Just looking at that thickness, if I just do a contour comparison here, I mean it's pretty obvious, even between the Joker, which is not a small handle, with a thinner stock thickness of the LT Wright Genesis here, versus this Joker Knives Ember. Obviously the handle length isn't too different, but the thickness is, and the broadness, yeah, there's a difference. Higher grind on the LT Wright as well. Gets a lot of things right. I wish that this Joker, I really wish that it had a higher grind, because I think it would be more competitive in a lot of ways. I also wish that it was a little more broad and did not have any relief cut out of this area right here. This knife has just a tad bit taken out here, like a normal Kephart does, and even that I could do without. I don't need anything taken out of here. I want the fullest handle that I can get, and I'm probably one of the few people who feels that way. It's just my XL size hands. Again, pins in these handles. So pins in all three of the LT Wrights. I still prefer something like Torx or an Allen, so I can remove scales if I want to change things out. Especially with this era, like everything's customizable nowadays, and it would be nice to have that ability. But I just bought the ones that I wanted. I saved up. I didn't rush out and just buy an LT Wright. I waited and found the right LT Wrights, the exact ones I wanted. And these right here cover all my bases. I don't need another knife. I really don't. I obviously have plenty of blades, but these right here are the most befitting of my size of hands, the way I use blades. Really, most of the time they can cover it right here. So anyways, guys, I just thought I would throw out a few options of things that you probably see on the channel. Different handle materials, different blade grinds and styles, but generally they get used in a very similar way. And I'm a big fan of everything that you see here. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment it down below. If you want to see one of these used in a particular way, I could probably try to do that. I have a trip coming up, and in that trip I'm actually going to be using blades from Bear Forest knives, and that's something I'm really hoping to add to this collection here, would be some stuff from Bear Forest knives, and I'm excited to see how they perform. So keep checking back. You'll see those videos soon.